For each line that we need to graph, before we even jump into the graphing portion, we're first going to identify which form is this in. And we have two choices, point slope form or slope intercept form. And the reason why I want us to name the form, because that tells us what information we should have. If it's in point slope form, we know a specific point. If it's in slope intercept form, then we only know the y-intercept. Okay, so it's important that we are able to tell between the two. Do you still need that page? Okay. So number one, okay, or the one that we're doing in the top left corner, is that in point slope or slope intercept form? Somebody help me out. Point slope. Okay, that should be easy to identify. If we have a number being added or subtracted onto the y, that is the most unique thing about it, right? Most equations that you're going to see are usually y equals. But if I have y plus a number or y minus a number, that signals to us that this is in point slope form. So then I want us to be able to pick out the starting point and then the slope. Now be careful with the starting point. Remember the number next to the x, that's your x coordinate, or the number being added or subtracted from the x, and the number being added or subtracted from the y is your starting y coordinate. And the one thing that we always need to remember to do is switch the sign on these values. So if it's x minus 2, that means x is positive 2. If it's y minus 1, that means our y coordinate is positive 1. Then your slope. And this is one thing that I really emphasize on Friday. And remember, I had you all tell me, where do we find the slope in the equation? You all told me it's where? After the... I was expecting all of you to say that. So let's try this again. The slope is always found where in the equation? After the equal sign. So after the equal sign, I see negative 2, but I'm going to make it a fraction, put it over 1. Because now I know what my rise over run is. Okay? So now, when I graph this line, I'm going to plot the point that is given in the equation first. So that's 2, 1. And then we need to use our slope of negative 2 over 1. And that tells me to go down 2 and right 1. Down 2, right 1. Down 2, right 1. Down 2, right 1. Down 2, right 1. And you know what? Let's just shoot for like 3 points. Is plenty. While we're doing these together, I might do a few more, but we want a minimum of 3 points. So the one place, and again, eyes and ears need to be up here. I'm going to give you time to work on your own. Okay, so the side conversations need to stop. But the one place that a lot of students make mistakes on is when they go to use slope. A lot of students will graph this line and they'll use a slope of 2, but they'll graph it in a positive way. So what you need to remember is that a negative slope line is going to always be going down as we work our way to the right. So that's a negative slope. Then if it goes the opposite way, that's a positive slope. So instead of getting caught up in, hey, is this negative? Does that go with my rise or my run or both? Instead of getting caught up in which directions you need to go when using the slope, just think about which way it should be going. So before I start, I'm like, it's negative, so it needs to be pointing down as I go to the right. So when I use my rise over run of negative 2 over 1, if my line is not going down as I go to the right, that tells me I made a mistake. So we're going to just memorize that negative slope goes down to the right and positive slope goes up as we move to the right, and not get caught up in, oh, I need to go up this way, or I need to go down or left or right. Okay? Why don't you all do the second one? Go and do the second one. We'll do the next two together. See what you come up with. Identify the form as well. Okay. So we should have identified this equation being in its point slope form. So again, the reason that is called point slope is that we're given really any point that's on the line. It doesn't need to be that exact point that is given. Okay, but the point that it shows up in this equation The x-coordinate is -2. The y-coordinate is -4. Again, the signs will always be opposite, okay, from what we see in the equation. So then when I go to graph this line, I plot that point first. So I go left 2 and down 4. And then my slope that shows up right after the equal sign is -1/3. Again, however you use that slope, whether you start by going up, down, left, or right, I don't really care. We just need to make sure that it is sloped so that it is going down as we work our way to the right. So I'm going to accomplish that by going down 1 and then right 1, 2, 3. Down 1, right 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we'll, again, at least when you're doing your own, I need to see at least 3 points. Okay, a minimum of 3 points when graphing lines. Okay, let's do these next two together because they're a little different in terms of just what information we're able to gather from the equation. Okay, so this next one, and being able to distinguish between slope-intercept and point-slope, okay, the parentheses on this side is what makes this one still in point-slope form. Right? This could technically still be simplified. I could distribute the 3. And that would turn it into slope-intercept form. But the way that it's written right now, it's in that point-slope form. What's different from the others is we don't have a number being added or subtracted onto the y. So it makes it a little bit harder for us to identify in that point-slope form. Okay, Angel Ford, we need to stop the side conversation. So we're going to start. The point that we're given is -5, 0. This x-coordinate comes from that 5, but switching the sign. This y-coordinate of 0 comes from the fact that there's nothing added or subtracted onto the y. Then my slope of 3/1. So I'm going to start by graphing this point at -5, 0, which is left 5, and not up or down at all. And then my slope, my line, needs to be going up as I go to the right. So for me to accomplish that, I'm going to do a rise of 3 and a run of 1, going up 1, 2, 3, and right 1. There we go. Okay. So the last one, okay, on this page. That one, I don't see any parentheses, right? It looks very similar to the one that we just did, but there's no parentheses here. There's nothing added or subtracted onto the y, so this is in that form of y equals mx plus b, making this a slope-intercept form. And so for some of you, that might be something you need to study. How can you tell if it's mx plus b or if it's in that point-slope form? Really important that we can distinguish between the two, because now when I find my starting point, this -6 is the y-intercept. Okay, sorry about that. So again, recognizing this is the y-intercept and not the x-coordinate for where we start, really important, because this -6 and the b value, this is what's called your y-intercept. And it tells us that we're going to start our graph on the y-axis where y is -6. So our starting point is 0, -6. That's how we write y-intercepts. Y-intercepts will always have an x-coordinate of 0. It's the y value that changes. The slope is still after the equal sign, so that's -4. So to graph this line, I'm going to start by plotting the y-intercept, which is on the y-axis, and then I need to do my slope of -4. Now, again, I know that my negative slope tells me I should be going down as I go to the right. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. It takes me slightly off the graph, but that is okay. So going down 4, right 1 allows me to get that negative slope. And I could also go the opposite way and go up 4 and left 1. And there I get my 3 points that I'm asking y'all to come up with. Yeah.
Shouldn't you can't you put take out a -2, then it's 2x plus 3 in the bracket, and then you can
So you're
work
thinking
out
of, yeah, you're thinking of taking out a greatest common factor. That's not going to help you graph the line or make it any easier. In fact, it makes it a little more complicated when you're doing that.
Okay.
Okay. That's something we'll work on in a different lesson. Okay. Go and flip this page over. And you know what? Why don't we do these next four in your groups? I'm going to give you 6 minutes to graph these 4 lines. You cannot sit there and do nothing. Do the exact same thing we did before. Identify the form. Then tell me the slope and the starting point. 6 minutes. And both the equations on the top are both in that point slope form. So again, we should be taking away the starting point. The number added or subtracted onto the x is your starting x coordinate. Number added or subtracted onto the y is your starting y coordinate. So we start here at +5, -5. So that's my first point. And I could even label this and say this is my start. That's where that point shows up at. And then a positive slope line. So it's going up as I go to the right. I go up 4, right 3. Or down 4, left 3. It doesn't matter. All right, next one. That is still in point slope form. Again, the parentheses give it away. And so that tells me that I'm going to start where x is -7 and where y is 0. So this start point is right here. That slope is 2. Tell me to go up 2 and right 1, or down 2 and left 1. Any questions there? Okay. And the last two. Again, point slope form. The starting x coordinate is -7. The starting y coordinate is +5. And the slope is -1/4. So this one is starting left 7, up 5. So that's this point right here. And then I'm going down 1 and right 4 to use my slope. Or up 1, left 4. It doesn't matter. All right, last thing. Which form? This one's kind of a trick question. Eyes and ears up here, please. Which form is this last one in? What did y'all say? Raise your hand if you said point slope form. Raise your hand if you said slope-intercept form. So I've got 4 people that are listening to me right now. Well, the rest of you just don't give an answer. You're all correct. It's both. Whether you answered or not, it's in both forms, right? Because we're starting at 0, 0. That's a point that I could see from the equation. There's no number added onto y or onto the x, and the y-intercept is 0, 0. So this one is actually both. Okay, it starts at 0, 0 and a slope of -5. So I'm going to go down 5 and right 1. Okay, I do have a homework assignment that follows.